Okay, so starting out here, we have our casting that's been scrubbed and cleaned and everything's looking good. I did not pull the bottom bearing cup out, so it's in there pretty good and it's in good looking shape, so we're just going to clean that up, make sure it's all good. We've also got the plug in, doesn't particularly matter, that's just so I don't lose it. Now, one thing to keep in mind is we're reassembling this. This is the bottom. We've got it upside down right now. This is right, this is left, front, back. Control valve, ram. Alright, let's get going. Okay, so in here, this is step one to reassembling. You have to put the roller bearing assembly into the pocket that it goes into, and that's for the control valve. Now, like I said, did not pull the cup out of the bottom. It's really good looking. We're going to leave that in there. It doesn't have any odd wear on it. It's sitting flat. It's good. So step two. Alright, next we're going to put the idler gear in. Now, this does go in a specific way. There's two ways to tell. Number one, there is a oil hole on the top so that lubricant gets inside of it. That goes up, which would be down. Second, the longer leg of it goes down, which would be up for us. Now, the shaft that I have is looking very good shape. We have good clearance, not a lot of rock. This is just dandy. So I'm going to put a dab of assembly lube on there, slide it in, then we're going to flip the whole casting over, slide the shaft in. Alright. So this is the top side. Slide the idler gear in. I'll put some assembly lube on the gear. Now we're going to slide the pin in all the way. Spin the gear a little bit, get the lube on there. Now this is held in by the retainer clip, so you just line the slot up. The retainer clip on. Alright, and that is in there. Alright, so the book says to find pretty much your best teeth and get them kind of lined up. These ones all look pretty well the same all the way around it. Alright, here's the seal. I just popped it out. It looks like it's an original. I think this might have been the cause of the leak, but still not 100% sure. That being said, we got it pressed out of the lower housing. Upper bearing cup looks just as good as the lower. We're going to need that in a second. So next what we're going to do is we're going to set some backlash and some end play on the main steering shaft. So we have the main steering shaft all assembled. We're going to put that in. Try and keep it kind of vertical. And like I said, on this one, the idler gear is pretty well wore the same on all the teeth. There's not some teeth that are significantly more wore than others. However, if they were, the Allis Chalmers book recommends you try it around in some different positions, wiggle it till you find a good backlash position, and then mark the teeth on the shaft, the teeth on the idler, the teeth directly opposite the idler, so that you can line that all up with the rack so everything's in the middle on a good tooth, or on a good set of teeth. All these gears are looking great, so I'm going to skip that step because it's pretty much just a waste of time for me. So what we're going to do now is we are going to set the end play on the main steering shaft. So, like I said, we removed the seal from the lower plate. That's going to make this step easier, and we won't damage any seals. Because this retainer plate and the bearing cup that's in it is going to set the end play on this, and because these are tapered thrust bearings, it will also kind of control the axial play. So when we pulled this out, there was a layer of sealer on this one, but then to control the distance between it, you get a set of paper and steel shims to set your end play. Paper shims are about 10 thou thick, steel shims are about 50, I think, if I remember right. Check the book, it's got all the numbers in it. But what you want to do is just build up a stack of shims until you get the proper thickness for minimal end play. And the book described it as having 0 end play to maybe even some preload on it. And to check that, you can stick feeler gauges in here, or you can put too many shims on to start with and just see how much end play is in the shaft. Starting with here is a homemade gasket, because those paper ones I cannot find the material for anywhere. So we're going to start with just a 30-second thick gasket. It may even be too thin. When you're setting your shims, you want to have paper, then steel, then paper, basically so you get a good seal with the paper shims on the gasket. Or, I'm sorry, you get a good seal on the lower plate, so the paper ones act as a gasket. The steel ones are strictly for spacing. On later models, there is an O-ring on this as well that will seal. It's less important. We're going to start with just this gasket, which was about the same spacing as the shim stack I pulled out of there. We're going to check the end play, and we'll go from there. Now right now, can turn that. I'm definitely on the bearing, so I'm definitely going to put at least one steel shim in here, because there's actually, I can feel that there's already a gap in there. And the bolt pattern is important, not the same from side to side, so if holes aren't lining up, your gasket's upside down. Still a little bit of play in there. Alright, so I added another steel shim, paper shim to it. That's a little thick, so I'm going to take that last one out. So we take that one out. That'll give me the thickness I want. Now, we're not assembling this right now, we are just setting our thickness. Okay, so now we're getting the rack ready to assemble. What I've done here is I've marked all of my teeth for the midpoint, along with, can't really see in there. I've also marked the back side of the idler gear, so we're going to try and get the middle of the rack lined up with the middle of the steering shaft half gear. So we've got a fresh O-ring on the cylinder, nice little O-ring groove on the casting there. Old one, definitely need to be replaced. A little flattened, a little crusty. So we're just going to slide this in. We're not engaging the idler gear at this point. Now I'm going to look through my adjuster hole there and get those lined up. So I've got the rack engaged with the idler gear now. So now we're going to take the adjuster and we're going to put that in there so it holds the rack up against the idler gear. This is a gasket I made to match the shims. It has these notches here to slip over the actual guide itself. Now the rack guide has the similar steel and paper gasket shim setup to the bottom retainer. The manual states that you want to adjust the rack so that there's minimal backlash between the rack and the idler gear. Alright, so I've got the adjuster plate all snugged up just with 2 cap screws, but they're holding it snugly in place against the gasket, against the casting. And I've also got the ram loosely bolted up so that it's not trying to cock the rack at all inside the casting. So now we just wiggle the gear a little bit, and I've actually got really good mesh on that right now. Could probably even throw a shim in there. It's a 5/10 shim, but we're going to let this go because I think that's a good fit. Alright, so now we got the main steering shaft back in the casting. Everything's all lined up, a little bit of assembly lube on the bottom bearing surfaces. Alright, so now we're going to finish tightening up both the ram and the adjuster plate. Alright, so here's our old seal, pretty wore out. Came out of the bottom retainer plate. We got this all cleaned up and a new seal to press in there. That's a National Seals 472185V. See the specs there. A little different, but it will serve the same purpose. So as you can see, this new seal is a lot thinner, but it will serve the same purpose than the old seal. There we go. Alright, now we're going in straight. So we're going to press this seal all the way down to the shoulder, because on the fatter seal, the actual sealing surface was down towards the bottom. There we go. Alright, so at this point, the power steering unit is more or less ready to go. I'm not going to put the bottom retainer plate on yet because I'd like to have this space open for when I try and get the control valve all seated up. So that's about it for now.